ahead. I can hear you, yes.
We don't have anybody in the chat. My wife just said to me, "Someone can hear you talking."
Hello and welcome to the Do Not Disturb Football Podcast. My name is Drew Pelter, In the Washington Commanders jersey, that is Darian Pickett. And in the Steelers white jersey, that is Nimmer. We are here to bring you fantasy football, NFL league news, and a good time. This is the Do Not Disturb Football podcast where football is forever. I will now pass off the mic to our commissioner, Nimmer. He is the commissioner in our fantasy football league. Nimmer, why don't you go ahead and give a little background on the history between us three? I am getting a notification that our audience cannot hear you, Nimmer. We will work on that.
All right, testing. Can you hear me now? Hopefully. Anyway, so like I was saying when you guys couldn't hear me, that we lived together, or we met each other through rugby, and within our career of rugby, we ended up living together. Me, Darian, and a couple of our other friends. Drew ended up moving down the street with a couple other friends. And so then that's just how we met, and we stayed into contact with each other, and now we are playing fantasy football together, and that's really what drove our relationship, kept our relationship alive.
All right, we are off to a hot start here. Our fantasy league, our fantasy football league is a quite unique one. We travel to a different location every year and do the draft. This year we are going to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I have never been there. Have you been there, Darian?
No, sir, but I love the Pacific Northwest. It should be gorgeous. I mean, we can give thanks to Ricky for picking the area, something new, something different, and being lakeside with the boys. Sounds like a perfect weekend.
Yeah, a huge shout out goes to the rest of the fantasy football league that we are in. We love TDs. That is our league. Big shout out to our commissioner, Nimmer Munakash, for running such a terrific league. Now let's move on to the podcast. Make sure you are liking, following, subscribing all of our social media accounts. We are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. With that being said, we will now get into our news for the day. And we're going to start with the injuries around the league. There was a ton of injuries that happened from yesterday to today. I'm just going to list some of the ones that affect your fantasy football team. Unfortunately, J.J. McCarthy suffered a meniscus tear in his right knee. He's probably looking at a 4 to 6 week injury. Could be longer. Usually that's the time frame. Marquise Hollywood Brown suffered a sternoclavicular joint dislocation. Could not say that before the show. Had to memorize it. Here we are. He's going to miss another 4 to 6 weeks. Jahmyr Gibbs suffered a hamstring injury. Doesn't sound too serious, but he is dealing with an injured hamstring. Giants running back Tyron Tracy Jr. was carted off the field after a non-contact injury. It was feared to be something serious, later reported by Ian Rappaport that it is not a significant injury. He should be missing some time, but will be back towards the middle of this season. Same goes for running back Marshawn Lloyd for the Packers. Went down with a hamstring injury, viewed as not serious. Any reactions to that from you guys?
Go ahead, Darian.
Honestly, the biggest one, and in reality, I think just with the debut was JJ McCarthy, complaining about a little bit of knee pain during the game, after the game, finding out that he has a bit of a torn meniscus, could put him out 4 to 6 weeks, like you mentioned, rehab, PT, puts him at like maybe another like 4 while he's training and getting prep for the season. I don't think it's going to be too hard, especially when you have Sam Darnold in there just to take the initial reps, initial snaps. And so you can get JJ, who is to be your new franchise QB, get him healthy, get him situated, get him comfortable going on into the season. So I think that's the biggest one to highlight initially going into it. And then I do think that Hollywood Brown is the second one. An SC joint, the subluxation, it is pretty severe in some cases where it is 4 to 6 week recovery time. But the issues they last about 3 to 6 months. So just be wary on him. He could have injuries throughout the season, so I would be fading him in that regard just due to this injury.
What about you, Nimmer?
So, just one comment on the JJ. It's kind of crazy that he tore his meniscus and he's like, yeah, you know what, my knee's not feeling well. The fact that he was like just thinking it's soreness kind of just shows that Vikings, you got a pretty good, tough quarterback, which is nice. But I think that the biggest one is Jahmyr Gibbs, because if you think about it, all the teams excluding Hollywood Brown and the Chiefs, they don't really have playoff contention, at least in the beginning of the season, or even have a chance to win their division. Like you have the Vikings, they're not going to win the division. The Giants, they're not going to win the division. So I think that Jahmyr Gibbs, especially a hamstring, I mean, as you guys know, playing rugby, like you have a hamstring injury, it just tends to linger and linger and linger and linger and linger. But it's kind of crazy that all these injuries are happening before the season. And it's this long season, a 17-week season, and they're thinking about pushing it out to 18 weeks. So it's not a good look if they're really trying to push it out that far. But yeah,
That's not even all the injuries. There was a lot more injuries. Teron Arnold suffered an injury. Drew Lock suffered an injury. Chase Claypool, Malik Neighbors. A lot of people going down with injuries. That is pretty common at the start of the season once you're getting back into contact. It was pretty crazy starting a podcast and looking at the injury report to start a season for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many. But our second story of the day, we have the Brandon Ayuk trade talks. They are swirling, have been swirling through the weekend into today. There is a new report that was just reported earlier today by Ian Rappaport. In a wild turn of events, Ayuk may be headed to Pittsburgh after all. A deal has been done, and there are reports that they are in good terms with the contract. The Niners have come back and offered Ayuk another contract. He has yet to accept that, so it looks like it's a little bit of a standoff. Never, I'll pass it off to you. You're the Steelers fan. You guys winning the Super Bowl or what?
Yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl. I mean, Mike Tomlin might as well fit his rings right now. I mean, with Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens on the side, Arthur Smith's offense, which people don't remember. Arthur Smith actually brought Tennessee to the first seed when he was offensive coordinator. Now, granted, he sucked as a head coach in Atlanta, but as offensive coordinator, and he wanted to be a Steeler, yes. And then our defense, we got so much better with Queen in our linebacking core. Yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. However, I'm kind of weary. I really hope the Steelers aren't giving too much for him, because I'll read out his stats for 2023. So in 2023, he had 1,300 yards, ranked 7th. He had 7 TDs, which was tied for 17th. In 2022, he had 1,000 yards, ranked 21, and 8 touchdowns, and he was tied for 8th. So I'm hoping that we are not giving an arm and a leg. Don't get me wrong. I really, really want him, but he's not worth the first round. Maybe a second round, but second and a 7th maybe. But I just hope we're not giving him too much. But I mean, he really wants to be there. George Pickens wants him to be there. and I think George Pickens is gonna succeed. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about this upcoming season.
I would be shocked if they gave up a first round for him. I think, that doesn't really happen a lot, even for the premier receivers in the league. You don't see a lot of first rounders coming out of trades. Darian, did you have anything to say on this?
Yeah, definitely. Like before the report came out that the Steelers and 49ers came out with a good deal, both sides looking pretty sharp on it. I just hate the fact that Sam Fran is doubling back now and putting up an offer when you had all this ample opportunity. When he said, "Hey, like I want to be here, I want to win a championship." We've been almost to that cusp, and you've been quiet, and you kind of came out. There's like rumors of thinking he's a diva. He's not. He just wants to make his money. He, like as he tweeted, know what got you there. And I mean, against the Lions with the deep bomb that like went through. I forget the cornerback's name. Went through, bounced off his head, and Ayuk made the miraculous catch. Like,
And that
I mean,
changed the whole game.
changed the entirety of the game. Like that one moment could signify his involvement in San Fran's offense. But as Nimmer was saying, I'm not as delusional. I don't think they're a
It's
championship
more
team.
realistic. All right.
You don't say.
Delusional.
You don't say, Darian.
Yeah. I mean, being a Commanders fan, we know what our expectations are for the season. But you brought up a kind of a good point there, Nim, about just really the impact of IU coming in with George Pickens. I think it could hinder his ability for the season and his draft stock, I'd say. When Pickens was basically wide receiver one when Deontay Johnson was out those 4 games, I mean, he was, 17 catches, 357 yards, 2 TDs, kind of lacking in that touchdown department. Yeah, I mean, you could put it up to Canada, his coaching, his play calling. But, I mean, he was averaging 21 yards per catch. Like, that's huge. And he was getting 28% target share. Now, when he was playing alongside Deontay Johnson, he was looking at about 19.7% of target share. So it's a pretty significant dip when there is that second wide receiver on the field with him. And especially with Deontay Johnson, Ayuk, though they're not the same caliber, they're kind of the same archetype. So you can see a hindrance in George Pickens, his stats going into this year. So I'd be, a little cognizant of if Ayuk does come into this system, where am I going to draft Pickens in fantasy?
I'll bring it back to you, Nim. Did you have any response to that?
No, I mean you're right. I think that with George Pickens, he definitely cannot get past double team. If there's no other receiver without Ayuk, we really have no other receiver besides Moose, which is our tight end. So I would be kind of skeptical to see George without a second receiver. But I mean, look at our offense. I mean, let's just break it down. We have Wilson, and Wilson's obviously if it's the Broncos Wilson, it's okay. We got Fields. We'll have George Pickens, Brandon Ayuk, Najee Harris, and Warren. Sorry, I can't talk.
Jaylen Warren, yeah.
Jaylen Warren. I mean, there's no weakness, and we have Moose as a tight end. I'm excited. I'm really excited. And the fact that he wants, and honestly, the fact that he wants to be a Steeler is huge. So, yeah. I don't know.
He definitely fits the mold personality-wise. That grit, just high energy, but in being like a true Steeler, you're ready to fight, ready to go for the team that's there. So, exactly. I definitely agree that he could fit the mold pretty well.
Yeah, and I just think I think that the Niners kind of, like you kind of said, they kind of dug themselves into a grave essentially because they let this last too long and let Ayuk venture out. He started FaceTiming Jaden Daniels like, oh, they don't want me. And then all of a sudden, the Patriots, which they're obviously not going to go anywhere. So why would he go to the Patriots unless he's going to be paid like the highest paid player, which he's not going to do. And, then the Browns, which they don't even have a quarterback. So, I mean they do, but Deshaun Watson isn't it. you know.
You're acting like Justin Fields and Russ are so much better than Deshaun Watson.
All right, they're not that much better, but I mean, come on, Deshaun Watson's pretty bad. I mean, and it's the Browns. Like, who wants to live in Cleveland? You know what I mean? I don't know. With no
Okay,
culture and
you
stuff.
okay, Noah? But something I probably should have explained. We are working with three different time zones on this podcast. I am coming from you from the great city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm the only Bronco fan out here. It is a hard time. I'm actually going to the game on Saturday. I want to know in the comments what sign I should bring. Should I bring one that says "Still Writing"? We'll find out. Numbers coming from Arizona.
You should have that sign. Just, are we still riding, Russ?
Just still writing ?
And then instead of still, you would do steel writing, like
Steel writing.
Steelers.
Yeah. I think I'm like 12 rows up, so I've got pretty good seats.
Nice.
It's like the only time I can get that kind of seats here in Pittsburgh because all the other seats are sold out during the regular season. So, like I said, Numbers coming from Arizona, and Darian is coming from Texas. He is weaning into becoming maybe a Houston Texans fan, wearing that Washington Commander jersey.
We have to cover it up.
The
actual team name.
Masking tape?
Yeah.
We'll move on to our next story. This is the Hassan Reddick news. He requests a trade months after being traded to the Jets. He officially requested a trade yesterday. The Jets came back and said to him, "No, we are not going to trade you, and we will continue to fine you heavily if you continue not to show up." So it is such a crazy situation going on in New York. Even Aaron Rodgers today came out and spoke about it, said, "Hassan Reddick, we want you here. Come join the ride. It's going to be a good time." We know that's all bull crap. But
Just don't like
let me get your guys' reaction to this. Number, why don't you go first?
I just think it's a bunch of hoopla, to be honest. I just don't. I mean, I think the Jets essentially should just pay him. If this is a really Super Bowl or bust, you're all in. Just pay the man. Like, if it's gonna be a couple $1 million extra. I mean, obviously we don't know the actual contract or anything like that, but I'd say just pay him if you're gonna be all in. Next year, if you don't go to the Super Bowl, you're firing everybody anyway, so you're gonna open up the cap. So you might as well just pay him. But at the same time, I mean, think about the locker room. He was welcomed with open arms, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh no, wait, I want to trade now." And then if they do want to open up the trade, then who's gonna trade for him? Like, why would you want somebody like that on your team that only demands the money? Like, I don't know.
Darren, what say you?
Yeah, I kind of see both sides of the coin. One from his perspective, but also the GM who quickly rebuffed the trade request. They gave Philadelphia a conditional third-round pick for him, which usually is dependent on how many games he starts, dependent on some kind of productivity as well. So, I mean, it really shows you their expectations of him. If he's going in and he starts game one, plays all 17 games, he amasses X amount of sacks, like, they're going to get a lower round pick essentially from that third. Or if he doesn't play at all, then it goes up into perhaps like a second round or an early third round. So it's all contingent on how Reddick plays and how Reddick gets out onto the field. But from his point of view, Reddick, that is, he's coming into his third year of his 3-year, $45 million contract. And I mean, when you get traded, you kind of expect to have some kind of negotiation during that timeline of what that next contract is going to look like. Just like what happened with Ayuk. They already have some contract negotiations with him that he's happy with, ready to go. So I'd be frustrated just like Reddick is, especially with who's making the same amount of money as him right now in contracts, that being Bryce Huff, who just signed with the Eagles. He's I think receiving 17.03 mil a year, and he's just coming off of the past 2 years of 13 and a half sacks. Okay, and then you're looking at a Steeler here, Alex Highsmith. He's roughly making around 17 mil. He's averaged between the 2 years 21 and a half sacks. He's had last year he only had 7 sacks. So it was kind of a down year for him as well. And then lastly is Harold Landry, who's making 17 and a half. So he's on that higher end of 17 mil. And he's had 22 and a half sacks in the past 2 years, back-to-back double-digit seasons. So with that being said, where does Reddick put himself in that remark? He had 27 sacks in the past 2 years. 2022, he had 16. Last year, he had 11. With that, he had a Super Bowl appearance back in 2022. In that same time, he's had 85 tackles and then 4 pass deflections. So he's pretty much outplayed his contract, and he definitely warrants some more money. And in that same regard, I don't think he should be in that same bracket as those 3 I mentioned. You should make a little bit more, especially if it's like a 4-year deal, maybe even a 5-year deal, because the true outlier is Jonathan Grenard, who's signed with the Vikings this offseason. He's set to make $19 million a year, and he only had 12 and a half sacks last year. Like, to get that kind of payday and like have just one good year, I don't see how Hassan isn't getting that kind of money. So I think Hassan, keep pushing, get your money, and get your money's worth.
I agree. It's a really tough situation for Hassan Reddick. I feel for him because, like you said, Darian, he is coming off of 2 pretty good seasons. 2 years ago, he was on the league-leading sack team on the Eagles, and he was the leader of the sacks on the team. Comes in the next year, they kind of change his position up, drop him back in coverage more, put him more as like an outside linebacker role and not a straight rusher. His sacks go down, but he still has a decent year. Then they're like, we know we got to pay you, so we're just going to trade you. And they trade you to the Jets, and now the Jets aren't going to want to pay you. It's such a tough situation. And like you said, I believe he should be paid with those top edge rushers that are getting that top money. But let's move on to the next subject. This is the best drama show I've ever watched in my entire life, the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, originally came out and said that he has no urgency to get a contract done with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb quoted that with his tweet and said, LOL. Someone must have gotten Jerry Jones' ear and said, hey, that's our best player, so we should do something about this fast. And Jerry Jones came back and said, well, CD, you're missed, okay? And all in the same time today, the Dallas Cowboys surpassed $10 billion in valuation.
What the hell is this?
I want to hear your guys' reaction. Darian, why don't you go first?
Honestly, LOL is correct. Honestly, Jerry has proven year over year to be kind of a joke. And I don't say that just because I'm a Commanders fan. You see it in even the offseason moves. There weren't any. You had a pretty damn close to a championship team, but you whiffed. You have an entire offseason. You lose your DC. McCarthy's on the hot seat. He should bounce here soon. There's just a lot going on in Dallas, but damn, you're making your money because this fan base, delusional. Now, when it comes to this whole situation, Jerry, you got a 3-headed monster here, and you're trying to figure out who to feed. You got only so much bacon, as we found out today. And I think at that point, you can really only salvage 2 in like the best world possible. And if I'm him, I'm honestly cutting Dak. I mean, what has he truly done for you in this organization? Have you won any Super Bowls? No. But you have these 2 cornerstone athletes being Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. Feed them, pay them, and build around them to be a successful franchise. Like, you could always find that next QB, find somebody like Tony Romo, but bolster everything around you to then have that successful team. I think it's just, buffoonery to play with one of your best athletes out there. So I think you should just pay him.
And then why don't you tell us your thoughts?
I mean, the person that's talking to Jerry Jones's ear, that said that CD, they need to tell him to get off the friggin' mic. That's what they really need to do. What owner is talking as much as Jerry Jones? I don't understand. Like, why you see the most successful owners, like the Chiefs owner, Hunt, he never talks. Your business is worth $10 billion, and then you're over here doing interviews. Like, what are you doing? And then you're just pissing off your players that don't even want to. Number one, they don't want to play for you. Number two, being a Cowboy player, you get so much more criticism than any other team in the industry, in the league. Whenever something happens to the Cowboys, number one headline. That takes a toll on the players in general. So then now you have the owner saying, "Oh, it's not an urgency." Like, I kind of understand where he's kind of coming from, where it's not urgent because he's not going to be playing in the preseason, but he still can practice. Like, they're starting to go live on pads. You see all these injuries happening with other players and stuff like that because they haven't been active and they haven't been actually playing, going full speed. They've been training, I'm sure, they're professional athletes, but they're not going full speed with a defender, another professional athlete on the opposite side. So, I don't know. I mean, Jerry Jones, he's been doing something right, obviously, with the Cowboys being, worth $10 billion, but come on, man.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation. I'm really interested to see what happens long term with this team. I'll give you my prediction right now. There are talks of this Dallas Cowboys team not being as good. I will go with that notion. I think that is what is going to happen. I'm smelling like a 9-8 year for them. It doesn't seem like a very good year for them. They don't have really a running back besides Zeke. You could throw Dowdle in there, but we've given Dowdle some chances, never really seen anything. You lost a bunch of players on defense. You lost your defensive coordinator. You're just doing your second year with your offensive coordinator. You lost the one before that. To me, it seems like Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat. 9-8 will get him out of there. And then who's on the prowl? I would probably say Mr. Bill Belichick. But we will go on to the next subject. This is probably my favorite subject of the day, the best and worst rookie preseason debuts. We're going to give you the best debut that is in our opinion. We're all going to go through, and then we'll give you the worst. So, Nimmer, why don't I start with you? Who was your best performer?
So I really liked what JJ was doing. He just seemed, I feel like he was kind of the dark horse. A lot of people was like coming into the draft saying that he's from a running situation or a running team with Jim being the coach, and he's kind of what they say about Brock Purdy, where he's more of like a game manager and stuff like that. And he proved him wrong. I mean, think about he did everything, but without one of the best receivers in the league. So that was a very highlighted. Caleb. A lot of people were saying that Caleb was probably number one, but I just feel like, I mean, he did look very poised. He wasn't crumbling under pressure. He felt the pocket collapsing. He didn't just freak out and go down and worry about like his injuries and stuff like that. Like I thought he would. He was very composed. He saw that quick pass to Swift. That was a pro level move. It wasn't just a college move like he did. But I just think that people are overlooking how good his supporting cast is. I don't think that we've ever had a rookie go into that good of a situation. Looking at his team, he has DJ, who was ranked 6th in receivers, Allen, who was ranked 11th, Swift was ranked 23rd, Kmet was ranked 7th among tight ends, and Rome Odunze is a first-round pick. So, I mean, even now, there's not. I would say like half, if not 3/4 of the league, don't have that good of a supporting cast, which is, I mean, good for the Bears, but
And a good
I,
defense.
huh?
Yeah.
And a good defense.
Exactly, and a good defense. So, I mean, they didn't even earn that first pick. So they really just got gifted that first pick from the Panthers. So Caleb did look good, but I think people were kind of overhyping him and thinking that he's good, but they're not considering how good his sporting cast is.
Darren, who was your best performer for the preseason debut?
Yeah, I gotta concur with Nimmer there. Honorable mention to Caleb, going 4 for 7, I believe for 95 yards. I mean, he did what you drafted him for at round 1, pick 1. He had comps like Mahomes. You saw it with the pass to Swift. He was moving around the pocket, found a little daylight, dished it off to him, got a 42-yard gain. So he brings that element of excitement, being poised in the pocket, being able to make things happen on the move, improvise, and then even, utilize his legs, get down the field. I think he had a couple of rushes where he ended up sliding. So definitely a really good performance, small sample size, I'd say, with the 7 attempts. But I will have to say, JJ, I mean, 11 for 17, 188 yards, 2 TDs, and then 1 fluke interception, or at least I'll call it a fluke. But, I mean, like Nimmer said, he was out there being poised, reading the pocket, understanding where the pocket was when it dissolved, and getting out, prolonging the plays, and dishing it to the open receivers. So I think definitely JJ is not a handoff princess like he was claimed to be in Michigan. He's actually a true QB. So I think he is a dark horse going into the season.
Yeah, so my best performer, and it's hard to judge these quarterbacks in preseason because Kenny Pickett and Daniel Jones were preseason all-stars. You see a lot of things change during the season. Just to be different, I would say J.J. McCarthy was probably my favorite performer, but just to go with a different name, I will say Jaden Daniels. And for you Washington Commander fans listening, I saw something special in Jaden Daniels in that performance. I saw a quarterback that can throw off platform, he can run, he can throw on the run, he can drop back and just dish out the ball. He only had a couple of attempts. He went 2 for 3, 45 yards and a rushing touchdown. One of those throws he had was an absolute dime down the sideline. It looked really good. And I would be excited if I'm a Commanders fan just looking at the offense. You saw Austin Eckler in the slot. You have Dotson on the other side with McLaurin and Robinson in the backfield, who showed some really good glimpses last year. You have a young tight end coming in. I would be excited if I'm a Commanders fan. I'm not going to lie to you. That debut I saw from Jaden Daniels was impressive. And it surprises me because I thought he was probably the worst quarterback coming out of the draft, to be honest.
Wow.
So maybe I'll eat my words. He looked really good. Let's go through our worst performers now. Darian, why don't you start?
Yeah, worst, most of the time I like to operate off of stats more than I do feelings. But I would say that Penix did have the worst outing in his debut, going 9 for 16 and 104 yards. Being a elderly QB, so to speak, I mean, being 28 years old, you think just with the tenure in school that he'd be a little bit more comfortable going into a pro style system. It didn't seem as so. I felt like he was kind of uncomfortable, and just like any other rookie in a new system, they're really putting him only to 2-step drops, even 3-step drops, getting that ball out quick. So you're looking at hitches, drags, curls, things of that nature. I mean, which was what all he really completed. But what really got me was just watching his film was his throwing motion. It just felt tight. It felt like there was some kind of hitch, and he's just over accentuating the release just to get more power. I don't know if it's just mechanics that he learned at Washington or what, but I feel like he's not utilizing his core strength, using his legs to torque himself into a tighter, stronger ball, he's using that upper body, the shoulder, and the arms to whip it into those receivers. But I would say just with that, I think there's some room to grow for him, especially in this first game. There's definitely room to improve there.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Darian. I did see that kind of the hitch in his throw, that weird throwing motion. I noticed that as well. He probably would be one of my worst performers from the weekend. Let's go to Nimmer. Who was your worst quarterback rookie debut?
So it's hard to say. So mine would be Drake May, even though he only did one drive. But that kind of is a red flag that the coach wouldn't want your rookie quarterback to at least go 2-3 drives. I mean, the whole point of preseason is to give them a live look, a game like rep. But them only giving him one or two throws, that kind of puts up that red flag. I mean, I saw social media today, they did like a combined practice, and he had a really nice dart in the end zone. But I don't know, that was probably my worst performer in the preseason. As you want, the whole point of the preseason is to have the rookies have a live gameplay and stuff like that, but they didn't want him to for some reason. So that's probably who my worst would be.
And going through my worst, just to be different in my answer here, I'm going to go with Bo Nix, and I know I'm wearing the Broncos jersey.
Oh, you guys are screwed if you don't like Bo
But
Nix.
I would say his debut is being a little blown out of proportion. That was the actual game. I didn't watch any of the other games. I did watch. Sorry, I failed you guys as a host, but I did watch.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I did watch the Broncos game. I watched Bo Nix start from start to finish. His third play of the game, his third throw, I think, was right down the seam, right into a safety's hands in the regular season. I think that's an interception. Then later in that same drive, he fumbled the snap. That was a big question coming out of that offense at Oregon. Are you going to be able to go under the center and take the ball from the center? And he is already showing difficulties that he likes the shotgun position a lot more. So that's who I would say, just to be different. Michael Penix was probably my worst performer, but Broncos fans, I know every year we get hyped up. We're starting to turn into like a Cowboy fan base.
Oh, no.
I would say hold your horses on Bo Nix. Let this guy mature and improve. Let's not wish a Super Bowl on this guy year one. It's not going to happen. But I will say I was impressed with some of the things he did. He looked a lot faster than Russ did last year, and can get the ball out pretty fast. So
I have a question for you guys. So do you guys think C.J. Stroud ruined it for QB quarterbacks because of how good of a performance? So now he kind of set that expectation high, and he thinks that, you know, he will that everybody needs to be like a C.J. Stroud that turns the franchise around year one and stuff like that. Do you guys think that?
You can go, Darren.
I don't. It's kind of a tough question to answer. I don't really think that C.J. Stroud came in and set the bar for like the rookie QBs for the future. I think just with the system that he was put into, given that he had some pretty versatile weapons with Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Running back was maybe your biggest question mark, but that defense and the system and the coach that you have, DeMarco Ryan, that's just the energy that you need from your coaching staff to invest into the player. So I think the system that he went into, the culture that they're building, is what really is the true testament to the bar that he set, in a sense, going forward for these rookie QBs. But I don't think it's just him.
Yeah, I think when you see someone like Stroud come in and have the year that he has, you wouldn't have guessed that watching preseason last year with the Texans, because CJ was running for his life. And then the season started, and they had a little bit of a slow start. Then they started to get rolling and turned it into a pretty good team. Mm-hmm. I would say it's not fair to say that CJ has kind of ruined the outlook for rookie QBs coming in, because there's been a lot of good rookie quarterbacks coming in. I mean, you think about the best rookie quarterback season ever. That was probably by Ben Roethlisberger, if we're being honest. Came in and won the Super Bowl. So
Was it
if we're gonna
next
say
year?
it,
Yeah,
oh, was that the
they lost
following
the
year?
AFC Championship, but
Oh,
I
he-
get you. I mean, it went
I
that
think-
far.
He had a pretty good year statistically. His
Oh yeah,
rookie year.
100%.
So if we're gonna say C.J. Stroud ruined the outlook for rookie quarterbacks, then we could keep going and going. There's been a lot of good rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Some other news we have: Justin Simmons visited the Atlanta Falcons today. That could be a very interesting tandem if you get Simmons and Jesse Bates back there. And Stephon Gilmore visited the Minnesota Vikings. Some other rookie debuts that were impressive: Tremaine Burton for Cincinnati had a long touchdown in that game, and Jalen Wright had 55 yards and a rushing touchdown. If those two names aren't on your fantasy radar, they should be. Let's go to break. We will see you guys in 5 minutes. Welcome back to the Do Not Disturb Football Podcast. I am Drew Pelter. In the Washington jersey, that is Darian Pickett, and in the Steeler jersey, that is Nimmer Munakash. We are now going to go into the fantasy banter. This is what you all are here for. The first part of our show, we give you the league news. The second part, we give you fantasy football. Our fantasy league, we explained it a little earlier. We travel to different places every year, do the draft. Last year, we saw Ricky Wisdom win the league. He had probably the best draft I think I've ever witnessed in my life, with Josh Allen at the 4th pick and just a loaded team after that. His bench
we fucked
wasn't.
up on that one.
Yeah.
As a league.
Yeah, but I thought you said we messed up somewhere else. I was like, wait, what did I do? But
My bad.
Ricky won last year. Someone else won the year before. My year doesn't really count though because it was a Damar Hamlin year. Yeah. Let's go into the best and worst draft positions. This is going to be a breakdown of what we think is the best and worst draft position. There are different advantages to each pick. We will kind of go through them as we go. Darian, why don't you start? What is your best pick?
For me, I honestly love picks 6, 7, and 8. Being in the middle of the pack, you can really perform a lot being in that point in the draft. Whether that be different draft strategies, or even just doing like best player available. You have a lot of ability to, poach somebody before the next person going into the tail end of the draft. So I really love, especially being at pick 6. I feel like you have a lot of value going into it, especially being right before that true middle pick in a 10-man league or being that middle pick in a 12-man. It just is very versatile. It gives you a lot of different strengths and different abilities to move around, especially if you draft in a fantasy league where everyone really knows what they're doing. So especially when it comes to our draft, you really never know what's going to happen. I mean, you have Austin Legault who picked in the first round, so which sends a whole domino effect of everyone on a run of great players. So thank you, Austin, for that. But truly, best pick is really got to be 6, 7, and 8.
What about you, Nim? What is your best picks?
So I agree. I think the middle is the best, just because you don't. I feel like 3, you don't really get the cream of the crop. So because you're behind 1 and 2, and then 8 coming back around round 2, you still don't get the top of that round. You still are kind of there at getting the 3rd best player in the round. So I think that the 4, 5, 6, you're always in the middle. You're never waiting so long to get the other pick. This is obviously a 10-man league, so after the 6, if you're a 6, you still have the 2nd round to, like, you still get a high end first round and then a high end 2nd round. So I think my favorite would be 4, probably, just because you would get the 4th best first round, and then you still get that 2nd round. You still get 3 picks essentially. So.
Well, I could not be more disagreeing with you guys. I disagree very heavily on this point. I think the best picks are either the first 3 picks in the draft or the last 3. I like the first 3 because obviously you're picking one out of some of the best players in the draft. And with the last 3, you can kind of double dip. If you're 10, you get the first pick in the 2nd round. I like that preface. If I'm at 4, 5, or 6, I am panicking a little bit because I know I'm getting mid sort of players later in the draft because I'm in the middle of the round. And I would say 4, 5, 6, my worst picks. My favorite pick, I think, is actually 3, which, remember, that is your least favorite pick. I love the 3rd pick. I feel
would say
like
my least would be 8. But my brother, shout out Mikey, loves 10 because he likes that back-to-back pick. So he loves those back to back because then you don't know, you know exactly who you're getting. I get that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can't do pick 10. It just, with my experience being the last pick, yeah, you can get two really great dudes first, second round, but I'm then waiting 20 picks
Yeah,
or
then
even
you're
20,
waiting.
like 24. And what am I left to do? And I feel like at 10, there's truly very minimalized ways you can have a draft strategy or go about it. At that point, you're really just doing best player available. So that really is kind of the finite look at 10. So I hate picking at 10. I'd rather, like I mentioned, be in the middle so I know what to expect and I can pick before people and just like mess up somebody's draft strategy.
That takes us right into our next subject. Darian talked about strategies. We have a full conversation dedicated to draft strategies. The best draft strategy, or our favorite draft strategy, is what we're going to discuss. I will start with you, Nim. What is your favorite draft strategy?
So I really like the best player available, just because you're handicapping yourself if you have a no RB or like a robust RB, and then you're forced to take a wide receiver in the later rounds, or you're forced to take a running back in the earlier rounds. So like you kind of mentioned earlier, like if you were doing a wide receiver 1, 2, 3, and then you happen to come across Josh Allen in the fourth, then you're gonna definitely get a lower tier running back, even though you planned on having a running back in the fourth round. So I really like the best player available, and also if you really like a player, then you can strictly go towards that player instead of saying, all right, well, I already picked three running backs, let me pick a receiver. This way, it definitely evens out your lineup.
And what about you, Darian? What is your favorite draft strategy?
Yeah, it really depends in most scenarios, but I truly like, especially where we're at right now in fantasy, doing a zero RB for at least the first 3 rounds, bolstering your wide receivers, even your tight ends, or if you want to be cheeky, you can get your rush heavy QB like a Jalen Hurts, just to secure those touchdowns in the 1 yard line or in the red zone. But especially with where we're at right now, it's a passing attack kind of league. You have some elite wide receivers going into it. I would say most teams have a true wide receiver 1. And quite frankly, I'd rather boost that, especially that we're in a PPR league, or even if you're in a half PPR league. Front loading wide receivers, pass catchers is huge going forward into your league. It's going to get you into the playoffs or even be in that fringe bubble kind of player. And especially with how running backs are right now, kind of like a dime a dozen in a sense. But if you find yourself at like round 4, you can find yourself with James Conner, David Montgomery, or Ramondre Stevenson, which aren't bad backs. They're going to be those lower RB1s, high RB2s with the pass catching ability. So you're kind of covering all bases in that regard. And you have trade bait if you want to get rid of one of your wide receiver 1s that you got in the first 3 rounds to bolster your RBs. So it's really about just the playing with it and understanding the value is going to be in the receivers first off.
That's what Jack did. Remember, throughout the whole season, he had a shitload of receivers and started trading them away, and I'm like, damn. Shout out Jack.
Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams.
That team was just unbelievable.
He had A.J. Brown in a trade with Devin, but, having those 3 in his arsenal is what got him into the playoffs and a deep run into the playoffs until I traded for A.J. Brown. But
just shows you can't buy your team because he ended up losing. I'm gonna go with my draft strategy. The robust. I know he's watching it. He loves that. The robust RV, or the hero RV tactic. I usually lean drafting more running backs than receivers. That's kind of my general rule of thumb. I guess if I had a second choice, it would be the late round quarterback draft strategy. I just realized I didn't explain those going into this subject. But
That's all right.
we had the best player available, which was what Nimrod talked about, zero RB, which was what Darian talked about. I have the robust hero RB. Zero wide receivers, another one where you're not drafting receivers and you're drafting tight ends, running backs early, late round quarterback, where you wait till the middle of the late rounds to draft a quarterback. Best ball where you're drafting high upside, high variance team, focusing on big weeks. That one's not going to work. I'll let you know right now. But yeah, I usually go with having multiple high quality running backs. I like to be sitting in week 4 with 4 healthy running backs. That's the ideal situation, and having someone come to me saying, "Hey, I need a running back. You have all the good running backs." And I'm like, "Yes." What can I do, the best player? So that was our draft strategies. Now you know them. For the rest of our league, you know our secrets. We
Still
will
gonna
move
miss
on.
you.
Yeah. We will move on to the last subject of the day. This is a fun subject. Who to draft, Texan wide receiver edition. We are looking strictly at the wide receiver core for the Houston Texans. They have a good addition of Stephon Diggs coming in this year. He's a former multi-time Pro Bowler. Tank Dell, who showed a lot of good play last year. Nico Collins, who just earned a huge contract, played well into that contract. Who are we drafting? Who are we fading? Meaning, who are we not drafting? Who do we least want to draft? I'll start with you, Darian. Who in the Texans wide receiver room are you drafting, and who are you fading?
Yeah, like you mentioned, there's a lot of star power here. Like you mentioned, Collins coming off a great year. I think one of his best. Dell, unfortunately getting hurt towards the end of the year, but just showed how explosive he is, making plays down the field. And then, Diggs is Diggs. He's been a perennial top 10 wide receiver. Adding into that offense, it's absolutely crazy to think who's going to get the best target share, who's going to actually produce. But in that regard, just to answer your question, just with the relationship that you build, being both rookies coming into the league, coming into this fresh offense, I'm honestly going to target Dell just with explosive ability, deep threat, great route running, and the relationship that he's built with Stroud. I think just with that going forward, he's going to be a great flex opportunity or even a super flex if you have that kind of league. He's definitely someone that you should target going into it as opposed to, I believe, George Pickens, who's right there next to him in ADP. I'm going Dell all day. When it comes to fading, I hate to say it, I think I'm going to fade Diggs. He's on a 1-year deal. He's got to prove it. But coming into a new system where there's already relationships built in, it takes a lot to demand the ball. And with the whole offseason antics or even in season when he was with the Bills, you don't want to bring that diva energy into this new system where the culture's rich and you're wanting to demand the ball. I don't think he fits the mold too well, so I definitely would fade Diggs in a sense, but he's still going to be a great receiver in the league.
And what about you? Who are you drafting in the wide receiver room for the Texans, and who are you fading?
So I would be drafting Tank Dell. And just because the fact that where he is with his ADP, and for the people that are watching that don't know what ADP is, it's average draft position. So within ESPN and all the mock drafts, where is Tank Dell on average going? So as of right now, on average, he's going pick 70. So that is around the 7th round. Quick math, 7 divided by 10. But Collins and Diggs is going 38 and 36. Diggs is 36. Collins is 38. So they're actually putting a little edge on Diggs. But with the 38, 36, here are the players that are around that draft. We have DK, Alvin Kamara, Ayuk, a future Steeler, Devontae Smith, Kenneth Walker, Mark Andrews, Cooper Kupp, AR, and Waddle. And all of them don't really have that too much wide receiver competition. So, and then with Dell, his ADP, people around is Swift, Ridley, Stevenson, Flowers, Montgomery, Dak, and Zamir White. So I would take Dell over all of them. And so that's really why I would pick Dell, just because there's so much better options where they sit right now, 38, 36. But Dell, that's like a prime spot for him. The person I'm fading is probably Diggs, just because I feel like with CJ Stroud, he's not going to do well with the complaining, the demanding with the ball and stuff like that. I think that he's more of a team player, and he's like, this is a team for CJ. CJ saying that. And this is a team. You'll get the ball if you're open, and Diggs is gonna say I'm always open, and they're just gonna. I feel like they're just gonna bunk heads a lot. But so that's who I'm fading and drafting.
So you guys are both fading Diggs and both drafting Tank Dell.
Yes,
so
sir.
I would say I disagree with one part of that. I would draft Tank Dell as well. I think he's going to be a very valuable player later in the rounds that will be there. He, to me, is the most dynamic receiver in this offense with the most speed and route running ability that is really good. All these guys can run really good routes. The guy I'm fading is Nico Collins. I know they just gave him a huge contract. To me, I see him more as like a possession receiver now that Diggs is there. He's going to be a guy that's just going to move the sticks for you, which is great for a football team, not great for fantasy. I think Diggs is probably going to vulture some of the touchdown usage from Nico Collins. And if Tank Dell is doing anything as well, it's going to me, be a tougher season for Nico Collins to be successful. I would draft Stephon Diggs if I'm sitting there, depending on the situation. If he's there and I'm in the 4th round and I need a wide receiver too, I'm going to draft Diggs. I think that this Houston Texans OC, Slowick, I believe is his name, he is going to draw up a lot of plays for Diggs. I think they are aware of what kind of player Diggs is. And if you think about the last time Diggs came to a new team and it was his first year, he had the best year he ever had in fantasy. So that is our last subject of the day. I will restate, make sure everyone is liking, subscribing, following, tell your friends about us. I am Drew Pelter. This is Darian and Nimmer. We will be back tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We got a good show for you discussing the top fantasy targets that we have and an AFC North outlook for the season. We're going to rank who is coming in first and who is coming in last.
I mean, we don't even need to discuss it. Everybody already knows. But yeah,
Strong 9-8 there,
We'll
him.
talk-
Strong 9-8.
9-8.
Coming to you from Pittsburgh, Arizona, and Texas. This is the Do Not Disturb Football Podcast. Thank you and good night.